it is funny the stuff that people get up in arms over today. It's like
Fired up.
we have it so good that we kind of invent these problems that aren't real problems.
Oh my God. I see that all the time with people I talk to on the coaching side of the house is like, and that's one of the things we can definitely explore is like the questions that I have people ask themselves about the things that they're complaining about is like, is this true? Is
I
this
I love
real?
to I love to dive into that. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
just to give me a background on your business,
Hmm.
who do you help and
Hmm.
how do you help them?
Yeah, so the business is the Empathetic Leader, and who we help are managers and team leaders, people leaders, help them manage their teams better, be more effective in their communication, really optimizing performance. And you do that by, improving the communication between them, understanding what makes people tick. So you explore the EQ and the empathy angle of people. You kind of try to reframe a lot of the things that and the notions that people have around leadership. A lot of that stuff is inherited and incredibly biased. So you're
Mm,
working on like, what are your internalized fears around like leadership and failure and, situational awareness, right? Like it's a completely different conversation if somebody has been in a chair and they've been promoted to leadership, so they have a rapport with everybody around them, or if you're coming in and you're the new guy and you're trying to earn respect from the people who've been there for a long time, which is a much different sort of approach. So what we're trying to help people figure out really at the core of it is how to work together effectively. And if you can reduce some of the friction that happens inevitably when people have to interact with each other, um, they can trust each other and they can do, more magical things together. And so at the end of June, I just wrote a book, which I was really excited about, like self-publishing and going through that process. Um, that I have, and it's called "The People Are the Prize, Not the Profit," and
oh,
it's
that's good. I
really,
like that.
and it's focused on, really like a guidebook on how you can implement things that can help you today if you don't want to coach or you're still in denial about being a terrible manager, which we'll get into in a minute. But you can like the book really goes through SOPs, like things that you can institute that remove friction and bias. Like you just kind of create the guardrails around your systems, your processes, your business, and everybody gets a handle on like how do we sort of optimize and be the most effective people we can be when we're in these working windows. And then how do you hire, how do you find, how do you retain people? What are the things that they're super interested in and motivate them? And then
Yeah.
like how do you interview? Like how do you know when somebody is the right fit? How do you know when they're not the right fit? Like how do you check those biases? And then like what else can you do to like improve your own leadership? And I include some businesses that have been like just very successful and that we all know and love, that are like unicorn status, that are models of like, a lot of people get intimidated when they talk to me about like the soft skill stuff because there's a lot of like, macho sort of hard skill, soft skill,
Yep.
patriarchal interpretation of like, what does it mean to be effective? What does it mean to be a leader? Like, if I don't, put my foot down, people are not going to respect me. And I have to have this authoritative presence around people. And what we're finding is that number one, like the pandemic kind of pulled the curtain off of all of these sort of instilled fears and, you know, guidance or invisible rules that we had about the working world, because it's like, oh snap, you can just be as effective from like Chicago, even though your office is in New York or in Florida with your family, or like, in Jamaica, like where you could still do this job and you could still be the best in the world on a screen if you have the skill set and you have the support and you have the tactics and the guidance you need to like actually execute. So the book kind of takes apart in like, in the paperback, it's about 80 pages. So I tried to get really, really tactical and like stuff you can do right now for like $5. And
Yeah.
then the paperback came out around 80 pages. So a little bit of a longer read, but you can definitely do it in like a couple of hours.
I want to dive into that in just a little bit. You mentioned something though that I thought was really interesting, that you work on a lot of fears
Hmm.
that people have. I'm kind of shocked by that. Where are these fears coming from, and what kind of fears are you seeing?
Oh my goodness. So, fears are so interesting, but you got to kind of de-escalate when you're having these conversations, especially because when I started doing this and I started talking to people, I really came in heavy on the like leadership, management, like you have people working under you, these are the things you should do, you're accountable to and for them, and yes, they're accountable to you, but it works both ways. And that was like that ruffled a lot of feathers. Generally, because it is really, really easy to, the truth is that the further you go up, the less you know what's going on at the bottom.
Mm,
And so when people get further and further away from the work that they were doing, and they don't understand the challenges that people are facing at the very bottom on the day to day, that
yeah,
disconnection is inevitable, right? That you lose the respect, you lose the trust. You know, it's the reason why people hate their boss. People hate their boss because they think that their boss is an idiot because they've never done the job before. And that's really where that, like, that's that place. That person doesn't understand me. They don't know how hard my job is. They can't relate to me. They don't know what
sure.
I'm dealing with. And that disconnect just kind of like foments all of this other emotional sort of nonsense that just, you know, grows in the workplace and in culture. So going back to the fears, if you are a person who has had bad managers or have been in a place where you have not seen effective leadership and you get promoted, I'm one of them now.
Yeah,
And I don't have the tools to do this well. And a lot of the time, you start to have these conversations about leadership, like at large. So I'll say, who's the first person you met in your life who is a good leader? And 90% of the time, people do not say somebody in their professional life. They'll say, I
wow.
had a parent or a guardian figure, my grandpa, my grandmother,
Yeah,
my uncle, my dad. That is the first time that I remember seeing a leader. Sometimes that 10% is really interesting because they don't have an example at all. So if you've come from a really traumatic home life, or you bounced around a lot, or you
yeah.
lost somebody you care about, and you don't have an example of leadership, you've
What kind of
you're
leader can you be?
yeah, you're learning on the job. And every sort of relationship that you're looking at is through the lens of like how can I get from you what it takes to become better because I feel like I lack. So if you're in a chair that you didn't feel like you had the skills to belong in, you're absolutely positioning it and framing it as like the potentiality to fail is so real and it's so high. And that's like a really like stressful place to come from and to go to work in
Yeah,
every single day.
it's imposter syndrome.
100%.
You come from a place of scarcity.
Mm-hmm. And so part of it is unlearning this and sort of repositioning. Dan Martell, the author of Buy Back Your Time, would say he would ask himself, why not me? Like, why not me? Why can't I be the best manager in this company? Why can't I be the best salesperson at this firm? Why can't I sell $1 million this month? Why can't I? Okay, last month I sold 4 houses. Why can't I sell 6 houses? You know, if you believe that it is possible for you to do anything,
Yeah.
then okay, now what? Who's going to stop you?
What do you do with that?
Yeah. And part of it is just like that's really scary. So that's another fear. That's the other thing, right? Like some people don't know how to imagine themselves successful
Why do you think that is?
because we don't have any real models of it. So we talked a little bit about me being in the entertainment and the music. world in my past life as a journalist. And that world feels like a completely different world than real life. You know, you're like in complete like normal land, and then that's like excess land.
Yeah.
And most people don't have examples of anybody reaching the upper echelons of success or like really liking where they landed in their life.
Sure.
So again, if you have no model, it's impossible. It's not real. If you know, like um what you resist persists, right? Like this idea that the things that you're like trying to avoid just keep popping up. Like I have my father-in-law is recovering from a really bad breakup, and
Mm.
he's like, Chris, I just keep seeing my ex-girlfriend everywhere I go. And it's like, because you're trying as hard as you can to not see this woman.
Ah,
You're
yeah.
gonna bump into her in the grocery store. You're gonna see her at yoga. You're gonna see her at the mailbox. You know,
Funny how
it's
that
just
works.
right. And it's because that thing has become such a magnet for your negativity and your hot emotions, right? Like you have hot emotions and you have cool emotions,
Yep.
and your hot emotions like drive you in a way to do all of this hella destructive stuff, and it's not rational at all. But it's for people, it's so satisfying. So this is like related, right? You don't have a model for success. All you know are hot emotions. You don't know how to lead. And all of that is manifesting itself in work, because
And
that is the
you
place.
think you don't deserve your position.
Oh, 100%. And like you think about how much time we spend at work, who you are at work largely does dictate, and you know, studies and research have shown this, that that's actually how you dictate your life. And you know, Willpower Doesn't Work, the book by Dr. Hardy, he talks about how people have to train themselves to get into environmental factors, how environments impact performance. And so if you have a shitty environment, you're probably going to have shitty performance.
Mhm.
If you can't turn off your phone when you're having a conversation with somebody and you can't be focused, then you're not going to put out your best work, right?
Right.
And so all of these little things are factors. Like a lot of the time, you know, one of the exercises I'll do with like folks who are higher up in matrix organizations is like, can you tell me what your day looks like? It's like, oh, well, I get up and I try to go to the gym, and, you know, if I can, I'll meditate. I'll listen to the radio in the car. I park the car, I get a coffee, and then I, you know, start my day, right? And it's like, okay, well, what does your day look like? Well, I answer emails, I'll take some meetings, I have one-on-ones with my staff. Okay. What does your one-on-one look like? Well, they come into my office and, you know, I'm having the conversation with them, but, you know, sometimes I'll get a call, sometimes I'm answering emails, sometimes, and it's like, if you were the other person, would you feel like you give a damn about what the messaging is, and that this is important to you, and
Yeah.
like you're focused on them? And it's like, well, no, but they know I'm busy. And so you're starting this sort of like snowball effect of like, well, that person, if I went and talked to them, because the other part of my sort of business is like actually coaching teams together, and like a lot of that is coming from like shit has fallen apart. Like we're not talking to each other. We're not
Yeah.
hitting our numbers. Like we're gonna have to break the band up if we don't figure this out. And you realize that it's a lot of small cuts that have gotten to a point where it's like, I can't stand this person. And it's those little moments where like, you know, this person offended me, or I asked this person to cover my shift and they didn't, or they said they were going to do something and they didn't. I got in trouble for it, and I never like we never talked about it, and they never apologized. And they feel very small, but when you think about how much time work has in our life,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of time to be spending in those environments. You not only coach the leader, you coach the team as well.
Yeah. And sometimes you find, like, when talking with the teams, you can tell really early, like, when somebody is disengaged. And that is the hardest thing. Like, when you've lost your team,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're going to have to spend a year,
To rebuild it.
possibly more. If you're not going to invest a year on this, you're better off just firing everybody and starting over. Because,
Gee.
like, yeah, 100%. Because that person has gone home every day for 6 months and complained to their spouse about you.
Yeah. Thinking you don't care about them, thinking you're not listening, think you don't
And
understand
now
them.
the spouse hates you because
Right.
because John is coming home pissed off every day
You
because
got the
of
whole
you.
family against you now.
Right now, now you've got the aggregate energy of 4 families that hate you. It's basically a mob syndicate coming after you at that point.
So how do you fix that? Like what you're brought in, right?
Mhm.
Help us fix this thing. Like where do you start with that?
So it's separate, right? So it's meetings with everybody independently. It's meetings with the leader. Like, hey, what do you think went wrong? What are you seeing from your vantage point? And it's a lot of, like, the corporate jargony stuff, which, like, I feel very fortunate to kind of have lived all of these sort of professionally charmed life because I've had exposure to so many different industries, right? I've been in sales,
Yeah.
I've been in marketing, I've been an executive. Like, I've really seen it. I've been in nonprofit, I've been in government, I've, like, kind of seen it all. I've been in entertainment, I've been in music. Like, I know all of these sort of diverse, creative, like, artist types, and then I know the A+ players who are very hard nosed, military folks who
Yeah.
have adapted to corporate life and are bringing that level of, like, just rigor to their day.
Yep.
And that is the expectation they hold. And so the problem with that is you can have standards, and you should, and they should be high. But if those standards are not widely available, and you've never ever actually communicated that to your team, and you're holding them accountable to
That's
some
the key. Yeah.
invisible, like, moving ghost or moving goalpost that they've never seen before, and the only time that they find out that they're doing well is at their 6 month review and at their year end,
Mm,
then that's where we start.
yeah.
So, like, let's start with the process. Let's start with, how are you talking to each other right now? Let's start with, like, who organizes things. Let's start with, like, what do we define as leadership here? Does everybody feel like they have, like, skin in the game? Because if the only purpose of the players on the team is to make the star look good, they're going to hate the star.
And that's so common, isn't it? I mean, that in my corporate life, I saw that a lot. Is that been your
100%.
experience as well?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, a lot of the time we invest in people that don't want to be invested in because they're successful at the thing. Mike is
They're a good operator.
Mike is really good at sales. We should give him a sales team. No, you should not.
Totally different skill set.
Mike likes talking to people. Mike likes to chase. Mike likes closing. Mike likes being on the phone. Guess
Yeah.
what he doesn't want to do? Motivate people and paperwork and schedule meetings and be accountable to somebody else. You know how many times in sales I hear from people like, my boss wants me to sell like he sells, but I don't sell like that.
Mm, most of the time. Almost every time.
Almost every time.
So what
Be-
went wrong there?
because my success is not your success, but because we need validation and we're looking for affirmation that we are good and we've done the right things and we are successful models, right? Like now I
Yep.
want you to validate me.
The leader is doing this. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
I want you to sell like me because I want you to prove that my way is the best way.
Really? Okay. I see. I always thought it was more like an ego thing, but you're saying
No,
it's
it's definitely
more,
ego. It's
but it,
absolutely like a godlike complex, right? Like I alone have the tools to make
yeah,
you successful.
my way is the best way.
My way is the best way. And breaking that for people is really, really hard, especially if they were trained that way. I learned from the guy before to do it like this, and now this kid is coming in and he wants to do it a different way, and he thinks he knows his way is better than my way. And it feels like an affront to the last 30 years of your career,
Yeah.
mostly because you're pissed off that you didn't even know you could do it a different way.
Yeah.
That's what we're really mad about, right? We're mad about the fact that somebody is just trying to break the cycle and that we didn't get to it first.
That's so funny you say that because I've seen that on almost every sales team that I've been on. Like, here's the way you do it. Don't deviate. You talk how I talk. You use the words our words. And I'm like, a lot of that's preference. Like,
Mm-hmm,
I'm not you. I don't talk the way you would talk. So I'm over a sales team. And what I tell them, like, look, this is my framework. Make
mm-hmm.
this your own. Here
Yeah,
are the principles around it, but I want you to talk like you. Don't
yeah.
talk like me. It's not going to come off. It's going to be weird.
In
Make it your
sales,
thing.
in marketing, in journalism, the authenticity is the game. That's how you win. That's how you capture people. That's how you engage people. That's how you get people to come back. Like, how did we get to a place where people have favorite writers or columns that they read every week or
Yeah.
Substacks that they pay for? It's because they care about the way that this person delivers the message and they want to hear it the way that only this person can deliver it. And that's worth something to them. Why do
Yep.
I buy from you versus the 100,000 other people that are sending me cold DMs every day? Something about this is the thing that makes me want to commit to you versus all the other options that are out there, right? Because we're all in the attention game. So what we're trying to do is like unravel all of this stuff that can make up and break, frankly, teams, relationships, partnerships, cultures, and like getting people empowered to be an agent of the like a steward of the brand, an agent of the team, a leader in their own right. Part of this is the exercise of like instilling leadership in every single person and having a shared mission and a shared goal where if I win, everybody wins. If you win, everybody wins.
Do you think that most leaders struggle with is it empathy or is it a lack of communication?
Both,
Both. It's both. Of course it is.
both. It's absolutely both. Um, the communication breaks down first, though, right? The communication and the interest in having a dialogue. And part of that is not even empathy. Part of it is just like we've become stunted in our interest in one another.
Mm,
So, like, it's like I can't even be empathetic because I don't care what you have to say. I don't think you're the things that you're going to give me are valuable. So why would I spend my time on this? Right? Like I don't want to have to talk to you because you don't have anything to offer me. And we've become so transactional
yeah.
that the communication isn't there. So you can't even have the empathy. The empathy comes when you have the dialogue and you're like, oh my God, I can relate to this person, or they can walk in my shoes. I can walk in their shoes. I understand what their motivations are. I understand what they care about. And you can't get there if you're not willing to engage.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. You've got a very unique background. I didn't realize what your background was before this conversation. So why do you think we're there kind of as a society of kind of just not really caring about people at scale? Do you think this is a new thing for us?
I've called it a debt. I've called it an empathetic debt, that we are currently like, just in right now. We're just in a cycle of like lacking cultural compassion, lacking interest in one another. It's a very divisive, polarizing time. And I think that, part of it is we gave into the excess of everything. The lies about like get rich quick, be thin now, don't do any work,
All
hustle
the good
culture.
marketing.
Yeah, all of the great marketing. Everybody's a winner, everybody gets a trophy, like, like without actually having to suffer and like learn and gain lessons and respect for each other and go through hard things. Like we've lost all of that and we've kind of abandoned that. And I think social media plays a role in that, because we get to escape from our reality whenever we want, for the most part, in modern culture.
Yep.
And you are naturally, and your brain is naturally attracted to the good things, not the bad things. And so the lack of compassion and the lack of empathy is a reflection of us choosing the easiest possible path and life forward.
Mm, man, that's interesting. Do you think do you think the media has any part in that?
100%. And I always think about like, was I a part of that like last wave of people who like really got to write and speak to artists and speak to media and speak to entertainers without the judgment and the criticism that like social media and
Yeah.
like news, modern day news programs have brought to all of us. And I'm really grateful for that, because I think I was able to have real conversations with individuals before like somebody could spring up an Instagram profile and like yell at you for your blue shirt while you're talking to somebody, like. So I feel very fortunate to have had that opportunity, but I also think that meeting and interacting with so many different kinds of people and getting exposure to the sacrifices that people have made, like that helped me kind of cultivate a sense of respect for every artist and every person who's trying to make it happen. And also appreciate like that there is no one path to success, right?
Mm,
Like it the shoe doesn't fit everybody, right? To your point about frameworks and like,
yeah.
how I deal with objections with a customer is not necessarily how you're going to deal with objections with a customer. And that's okay, as long as we deal with it, right? Like as long as we find a strong frame to respond to it with. And like that, you know, the abandonment of resilience is probably the greatest sort of attribution that I would make to like our inability to connect with one another.
The abandonment of resilience.
Yeah, like the
That's interesting.
inability. Yeah, the like we're just not going to deal with hard stuff. Like if
Mm,
it's going to be
yeah.
hard for me, I'm going to avoid it. And who you encounter when you're suffering is the most powerful relationships you are going to form.
It's shared trauma,
A
right?
100%. But it's also like how you perceive suffering, right? Because entrepreneurialism is the most painful, expensive, hard call to
Yeah.
answer. Like starting a business and doing it alone and not finding your tribe, and that like paying out of pocket before anybody pays you and before you're validated, and
Yeah.
like all of those moments where you're looking for like just a sign that you're on the right track. It takes so long and it's so hard, and then the world shifts under your feet again, or there's a new law, you have to fill out this form, you're paying out all of your gross, you know, like you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe now's the time I hire somebody. That person doesn't show up. They fuck up all your appointments. Like, it's just so many, like,
It's always
hurry
something.
up and waits, right? And like those moments where you encounter other people who are on that path is so powerful and meaningful. And that's like when you're like, oh snap, I've learned something about myself, but I've learned something about someone else.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Can't have
Most
that.
people most people avoid that part. We're all in our bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you get into this line of work?
Mm,
I mean, this is a very kind of obscure field that I love it. I didn't know
yeah.
this field even existed.
Yeah. I wonder if, 20 years from now I'll be like called the like modern like or mother of like empathetic awareness and like empathetic leadership. I hope so. But so when I thought about coaching, I was like, you know what? Like I did all this deep work and I've worked with coaches and I still work with coaches that I really love and respect because I'm like, I'm not, there are things that I'm not good at and there's stuff that I don't know and I want to learn more about. So I'm going to go find the people who are crushing it at that and like see if they will give me a chance to kind of like, sponge off of some of their talent and success and resources. And just picking somebody's brain who's way more successful than you is like worth its weight. Um, that said, I thought about coaching for a really long time, and then it became the sort of imposter syndrome of like, what
Yep.
credentials do I have to teach anybody else anything? And then I realized for, the time that I've been managing people and mentoring people and leading teams and building teams and reporting to boards and like, fighting bad laws, all of these things, all of these moments where I've worked with other people, um, I've been mentoring and leading and coaching the entire time. And just because we didn't call it that doesn't mean it's less true and it's less real. So there was a little bit of work. Everybody says like, at least in the coaching world, like your first client is yourself. And
Hmm.
so I kind of had to work through my own stuff before I allowed myself to like share what I know with everybody else. So that was the first thing. Then the second thing was, okay, now let's do this sort of decision tree. Like, what problems can we solve that are going to have the most massive impact for like leadership, for management, for ROI, for dollars and cents. And in every place that I've ever worked, bad leadership or like toxic culture was pervasive and it caused really talented people to leave. It made really talented people not want to work there. It created bad press. It created bad reputations, so reputational harm. And it made those places lose some level of like authority in the marketplace.
Hmm.
So on the like dollars and cents of that, like you're talking about millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in lost opportunity and revenue, in donations,
Huge
and
opportunity cost.
just like and you're not going to get it back. It's like there is no repeat visit
Yeah.
in real life, right? Like we're always talking about that in the web world. Like, how do I get somebody to come back? How do I upsell them? How do I give them something else? But like, you don't really get that when I feel like I don't connect to you anymore, or that trust is broken, or that relationship has been mismanaged. So for me, then it became like the hardest part is going to convince people that they need to invest in this. But when it's a lot of the time, I talk to people when it's like at the edge and it's like we're on the brink here, like
Yeah.
this person doesn't want to talk to me anymore, this relationship has been mismanaged to the point of no return, I'm gonna have to like hire somebody to talk to this person for me. Like it just becomes so tenuous and so crazy in the workplace that it's like you will pay any amount of money to keep it from all burning down.
That was my next question was, like, this is something that I think that most businesses have a problem with. Like, I think most businesses, not alone let alone most people, most everybody could use your services essentially. Um, but I would imagine they're not that self-aware to know that they
Hmm.
need it, right? So when
Yep.
someone comes to you, like what spot are they in to say, "Hey, I might need your help," or how does that conversation start?
Yeah, so a lot of the time what we'll do is I'll have a call with somebody right off the bat, and I usually try and do like, 30 minutes, but my wife would laugh and say they never go 30 minutes. They always go longer because I actually want to help the person and get to the root of it, because
Yeah.
it always starts with the very innocuous thing. And it's like, I'm having trouble with my coworker.
It's never the real thing. They
Yeah,
give you the surface level. You gotta go deeper.
right, right. And I'm like, well, why? Why are you having trouble with it? Because they don't listen to me. Why is that? Well, because we had a disagreement in 2022. Why? Well, we had the disagreement because I wanted to not go to work and they wanted me to come to work. And what did that mean? What happened? What was, and then you keep digging and digging and digging, and you go under the surface, and then you find that like there was a real breakdown in communication, and now the person doesn't want to work with you anymore because they don't feel like they can trust you, and you're not reliable, and you haven't done anything to address it, and you haven't changed your behavior, and you still don't know that they're mad at you, but you kind of do, and you're just ignoring it. And now you've created this really toxic thing where everybody around you is kind of like, geez, when are they going to get it together? I don't even want to interact with them because they're so dysfunctional. They don't even talk to each other. And like, then you have this like reverberation that comes from, you think it's this, but
Yeah.
it's really this. Because in a workplace, everybody talks to each other and everybody gossips and everybody knows that Shauna and Kelly haven't spoken since 2022 because of this one thing.
Yeah.
And now everybody in the organization is like, okay, I can't work with both of them. They can't even sit in the same room together. So now I have to go one way or the other, and my shit doesn't get done. So, like, part of it is how self aware is the person. And so I've learned a little bit more of this as I've continued having conversations with people, that part of my gift or part of my skill set is helping people become more self aware, right?
Yeah.
Part of it is like, you're not necessarily ever going to be ready to admit the things that you're going to have to admit over the course of this process. And that's why I'm here.
Mm.
I'm going to help you get to where you need to go so that the stuff that put you in this place in the first place never happens again. Because now you're going to have that self awareness, and you're going to have that EQ, and you're going to have the communication skills, and you're going to be able to admit that you screwed up, and you're going to hold yourself to a different standard, and you're going to hold other people to that standard, and you're not going to be mad when they hold you to that standard, because part of it is like, it's all a cycle, right? It's coming back to a place where it's like, oh, I deserved it. I deserved for you to be mad at me
Yeah.
because I let you down, and that had consequences, and I have to face up to the consequences. And now that I know what the consequences for my actions are, it's not worth it. And everything, like, there's a cost to everything.
Yep.
Um, Taylor Welsh says there's a cost to get what you want, and then there's the cost to keep it. And I love that, because I think people think that they just get to wherever they get and then they're entitled to it.
Yeah. It's theirs.
Yeah, I got here, I did it. But no, you have to keep fighting every single day to be the best in the world at anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. So I mean, like, how do clients find you in the first place? Is it like more referral based, word of mouth?
Yeah, so it's actually been really interesting. I've been talking to people. We had a free ebook that came out, I want to say a year and a half ago. That was really my entry sort of announcement into this world. And it was really a comparison between like um, empathy and conflict. And it was really like, how can you replace like conflict responses with empathy, and like how
Mhm.
do you meet those conflict driven encounters with empathy, and like what are the advantages to doing that, and really kind of like walking people through some of the tactics that they can use to like employ empathy in response to like, negative situations and outcomes. So that was like a free ebook that we gave away, and we started talking to people that way. The website, people come in through the website, right? The empatheticleader.com. And will like reach out, they'll email me and ask questions. I've had a couple of pieces, a couple of interviews in like Authority magazine. And that's been helpful as a way for people to just kind of have different conversations about like management and leadership and how they respond to, these challenges in the modern world. um, One thing that I think is really interesting that we talk about in the book is that I think we are coming on an incredible moment in the the corporate world and the labor world, where we are going to see an incredible drop off from the amount of people that are eligible to even become managers, because the trend line right now with Gen Z is that 70% of them don't actually want to be managers, because they're looking at managers in their lives and they're saying,
Really?
that job fucking sucks. I don't want those problems. I don't want to be responsible for anybody. I don't want a promotion.
Yeah.
I'll stay exactly where I'm at. So when those people retire, or those people leave their jobs, or those people get promoted, we're going to have this trend line of and this gap of leadership, because we've made this so toxic and so unattractive to people, to this next generation of the workforce,
Yeah.
that they're like, thank you, I'm good. I have my nights and my weekends right now, and I see that that person doesn't. I leave before that person. And we have completely just erased the idea of like hard work and like earning something, and like that feeling of working hard and the satisfaction of it.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, it's also that people are not rewarded for their effort, right? That's the other thing. So that's where the culture of an industry or a workplace comes in. If you do a really good job, but you're not rewarded and they just give you more work, it's like, well, what about this is working?
Yeah.
So it's very unattractive to young professionals right now.
What do you think maybe like the biggest one or two, case studies or testimonials, turnarounds that you've seen of someone from working with you?
I really love that. I think that just perspective wise, I had a young man from overseas who had a large team that he was managing, and he was really struggling with this exact concept. And he was really trying to figure out like if he even wanted the job. And he was working in a nonprofit, and he was struggling with, he had like 40 direct reports, and he
Mm.
was in his 30s, and he's just like, this is a lot of personalities to manage. I don't know how to do this. And one of the things that we talked about, so some of it is just like the emotional, but some of it was also like the practical. It's like, okay, we're gonna have to like deputize some people. We're
Yeah.
the like 5 stars in in your org that you can deputize as like proxies of yours, and then they can have their own teams, and you can sort of break down work that way, and then we can install SOPs, and we can actually operationalize how we work and what the automation is, and like when they get involved with you or how they interact with you. And like maybe instead of doing like weeklies with 30 people, you're trying to figure out, how do I do monthlies with 30 people and like weeklies with 5 people. And part of it was like, a lot of times the really good managers and the good leaders know this stuff. They just don't have any support. So
Mm.
they don't feel like they have the power or the authority to execute a change without like talking to somebody. And sometimes I'm just like, well, how do you want to solve the problem? Like there's some people who can't even get there because of the reasons we talked about, right? Like if you're so down in it, like asking you how you fix it, that we're not doing that for 8 weeks. Like
Yeah.
we've got to work on some of the like mindset and performance things and like limiting beliefs and negativity and all that stuff. But for some folks, you talking to them for 4 weeks and you're like, well, you kind of got this. You're just afraid. You're just afraid of changing something. You're afraid of like not being liked because you picked these five and not this five.
Yep.
You're afraid that, if you change things, that there's going to be churn and then you're going to have to manage a different problem.
Yeah.
But the other thing is if you're changing something for the better and you stand on it and you really believe that it's going to make things better in the long term, including for your team, and it's not just a selfish act, then like you owe it to everyone as a leader to do that, right? To enforce that and to make it happen and to deal with all of the blowback that comes from making hard decisions and hard changes. The
Yeah.
other thing I'll say, and this is kind of a plug for the book, if you were to go and get the book for $5 on my website, you will see, and this is not on the paperback, so it's really interesting, but there is someone who is very special to me who gave a testimonial that is on the back of the book for the e-book copy of it.
Yeah.
And it's just he is an incredible person, and I interned for him when I was young, and um, he is one of the greatest marketers of all time, and to get that sort of plug from him was just the greatest and most unexpected gift. And I respect him and I love him a lot. So that's a shameless plug to go get the book and skip to the back page, but make sure you read the book.
This marketer, do you want to name drop him? Totally fine if
I
you don't.
I do not.
Okay.
I promise that I would not. But it it would not be hard for somebody to make that connection. If you read my bio, you will know who it is.
Yeah.
But
Fair
yeah.
enough. Now I gotta go read the book.
Well, you're getting a copy, so don't
Oh,
don't worry about that.
oh well, thank you. Thank you. I almost
Yeah.
downloaded the one on your website, but I'm like, oh, let me talk to her first and then I'll
Yeah, yeah, no, you're
go down
getting
that
you're
road.
getting both. Don't worry about it. But the
Oh, well,
second
thank
one
you.
is way better. The second one is way better. It's my labor of love, and I'm really proud of it. And yeah, we talk about some of the case studies that are like global, right? Like, because it's one thing to hear from me, but it's another thing of like, how does this actually practically work in like a highly matrix organization? So like Salesforce has their own sort of culture codex and the way that they deal with like conflict and management. So that we name that. We talk a little bit about Microsoft's work in this
Mm,
space. And like if you want to see a master class in like empathy and leadership, when all of those tech layoffs were happening, I want to say in the last 2 years,
yeah.
Satya Nadella's letter or statement about those layoffs at Microsoft
Yeah.
was kind of the best, way to deal with like the hardships of being a leader.
Mm,
So totally recommend, like, if you want to see how you think about these things at a high level, when you have to do the hard things, the things that are painful and that hurt and that make you the top of the food chain, that is a really good example. He gave the best possible statement at a really hard time that hurt a lot of people and changed the course of a lot of people's lives, but dealt with it with the incredible amount of grace and class that he like met the moment. And we say that, right? Like somebody meets the moment or they don't meet the moment. Like Simone Biles met the moment this
yeah.
week, but like that's also an example of like somebody who's met the moment of what it means to be a leader.
That is super fascinating. I had a few talking points that I wanted to go over with you. I didn't get to any of them because this was such a good
Well,
conversation.
maybe we'll do a follow-up.
I I'm gonna have to do a follow-up, at least one more follow-up with you because I could talk about this for hours. It's a super fascinating topic to me. Psychology, communication,
Mm-hmm.
empathy. It's sorely needed, not just in the business world, but families, every relationship. could use more empathy, better communication. So I love what you're doing. Um, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure.
Of course. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and the thoughtful questions. And I hope we do get to do this again, but at the very least, we will be friends for life now.
Definitely will.
Awesome.